Hi, this is Ryan Doman of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Come out to PNC Park in 2010 to see me and the Pirates embark on their 18th consecutive losing season. Relive the wonder of me getting an ear infection, which will keep me on the sidelines for 60 games. Experience the joy of watching fireworks at the end of every game, which keeps you from caring about how bad the team is doing. And rejoice when I will fulfill the curse of the bobbleheads as I get traded before the end of July to move the franchise forward. 2010 Pirates Baseball. It can't get any worse than this. Thanks, Ryan. What's up? It's Mercer here, and I'm back with my 2010 Pittsburgh Pirates Baseball Primer. If you were here last year, you may remember that about 90% of the things that I said were going to happen came true, and I was only off with my win-loss prediction by 2 games. So let's see if this year's predictions will be as good as last year's. I think they probably will. Well, let's go ahead and get into it right now. Catcher, Ryan Doman. He's a decent slugging catcher, switch hitter. It's kind of a nice guy to have on your team, but he always gets hurt. You can't count on him to be in the lineup for more than about 80 or 90 games every year. This year, I don't know what it is. I actually expect him to be fairly healthy, and heck, he may even hit 8 to 10 home runs by the time July rolls around. But if he does, and Tony Sanchez continues to perform well in the minor leagues, don't be a bit surprised if Ryan Doman is traded by the July trading deadline. He's the last part of the old and whiny atmosphere that the front office is looking to change, so if you're looking for a good salary dump candidate for this year, Ryan Doman's probably your man. First base, Jeff Clement. Who is this guy? You know, I read a lot of Pirates message boards, and most of the people on there can't even spell this guy's name, let alone pronounce it. Here, let me spell it out for you. It's Clement. It's not Clement. It's not spelled Clements. It's not spelled Clemens. And it's certainly not spelled Clemente, as much as I'm sure you'd really like it to. The Pirates got this guy from the Jack Wilson and Ian Snell trade with Seattle. He used to be a catcher, and now he's being converted into a first baseman. A project like this with the Pirates doesn't really have much of a chance of working out, and I really don't see Jeff Clement hitting much better than about 240 or 250 over the first 6 weeks of the season. Don't be a bit surprised if Garrett Jones is moved from right field into first base so that Clement can go down to the minors to try to work on things. Second base, Akinori Iwamura. The Pirates traded with the Rays to acquire Iwamura and gave him about $5 million to play for the team this year. The problem is, the Rays were going to cut Iwamura anyway, so they really didn't need to give up the extra player. As usual, the Pirates are the gift that keeps on giving. Anyway, Iwamura is an average player and doesn't really have a whole lot of power, and I don't really see him doing much for this team. And he's another guy that I would expect to be shopped around before the July trading deadline to see if the Pirates can get anything for him. Third base, Andy LaRoche. He's a good defender, but he's really not that much of a power hitter, especially at a premium power hitting position. He might do a little bit better than last year, maybe 270, 15 home runs, but with Pedro Alvarez coming up through the minor leagues, I really don't expect Andy LaRoche to be playing third base for the entire season for the Pirates. I'd look for him to maybe get some chances at second base, or maybe even sitting on the bench once Alvarez comes up during the middle of the season. Shortstop, Ronnie Cedeno, or Bobby Crosby, or both of them. The Pirates are probably going to play shortstop roulette throughout the entire year, depending on which one of these guys starts to suck or one of them starts to do well. They're both fairly average players and really below average hitters, and on a team like the Pirates, you really can't have players like this on your team because you just can't hide them. Left field, Lastings Millage. This guy has a lot of potential, but teams have been looking for that potential for several years now. A few years ago, Lastings had 24 steals with the Nationals. I wouldn't expect anywhere near those numbers anymore because he's got a little too much junk in his trunk. I do expect him to be an offensive surprise for the Pirates this year, maybe hitting about 15 home runs and having a 290 to 300 average. That's a pretty good season for a player on the Pirates. Center field, Andrew McCutchen. He is the man. The problem is, no one knows how to spell his name either. Look, it's McCutchen. It's not McCutcheon, and it's not McCutchen. It's McCutchen. For a guy that's the face of the franchise, you'd think people would know these things. Anyway, this kid has a great mindset and the tools to match. I don't see any reason why he won't have continued success this year, maybe 15 to 20 home runs and 35 to 40 steals. That is, if the Pirates let him steal that much. A guy like McCutchen should be trying to steal every single time he's on base. The Pirates have a big problem trying to score runs, and that extra 90 feet can really make a big difference. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a Pirates fan. Right field, Garrett Jones. Everyone calls this guy legend. I'm sorry, but how the hell does having one half of a good season make you a legend? I've seen way too many career minor leaguers set the world on fire and then fall flat on their face the next year. I'm not saying this is going to happen to Jones, but I would temper your expectations and maybe expect 25 to 30 home runs and maybe a 270 average. Those are basically Adam LaRoche type numbers, but for the Pirates, that's pretty good. Let's move on to the starters. Zach Duke. He had a great first half last year, but his second half was pretty awful as it's been over the past couple of years. He's a good innings eater, and I would expect maybe a mid-4s ERA with plenty of hits allowed, as he's just a mediocre control-type pitcher. Don't be a bit surprised if Zach is one of the players that the Pirates are looking to trade at the trading deadline, especially if it looks like the Pirates aren't going anywhere again this year. Ross Ollendorf. Last year he became the ace out of nowhere, just as I predicted, which of course means that this year he will acquire the curse of the Pirates ace. What is that, you ask? Basically, the best pitcher for the Pirates last year falls flat in his face the next year for whatever crazy reason. It's been happening for about 8 years now. I don't think Ross is going to do terrible this year, but I wouldn't expect his ERA to be in the 3s again. I would look for maybe 8 to 10 wins and an ERA in the mid to high 4s. Paul Maholm. Last year I said Paul would have more no decisions than wins, and what a surprise. I was right. I would expect pretty much the same thing this year because the Pirates' offense is going to be pretty crappy. He's a good innings eater, and I would expect a career norm season for Paul, which is a 4.5 ERA and a 1.4 whip. You know, Ollendorf, Duke, and Maholm are all pretty good innings eater type pitchers, but they're basically number 3 starters. If you don't have that number 1 and 2 stopper type pitchers, you're really not going to be that competitive in the long run. Charlie Morton. Everyone knows this kid has nasty stuff, and he's shown flashes of brilliance last year and in spring training. If he can just harness his control problems, he'd probably be a pretty good pitcher. So, we might as well call Charlie our ace out of nowhere for 2010. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if in the second half he figures something out and strikes out a ton of guys and ends up leading the team in strikeouts. It won't translate to a whole lot of wins, but it'll be a nice story going into 2011. Daniel McCutchen. Since Kevin Hart decided to walk everyone like an Egyptian in spring training, he gets a chance to start in the rotation. I wouldn't expect great things from Daniel. He's your prototypical number 5 starter. Besides, we know that at least 1 or 2 guys on the Pirates starting rotation is going to suck, and they're going to bring up someone from AAA to fix it. I would expect Brad Lincoln to be up in the starting rotation sometime in the second half of the year because they want to get a good look at him going into next year. I could run through the bench, but if you're on the bench for the Pirates, what does that really say about you? Church, Jaramillo, Young, Rayner, Crosby, they're pinch hitters at best. If Andrew McCutchen or Garrett Jones gets hurt or performs poorly this year, this offense is doomed. The bullpen looks like an AARP convention. Octavio Dotel's the closer, and he's not much better than Matt Capps was. Plus, he's 10 years older. I don't understand why the Pirates didn't at least try to keep Capps to see if he could regain some of his old form. Well, anyway, we've got Hanrahan, Meek, Carrasco, Donnelly, Tashner, Lopez, Tom, Dick, and Harry. It doesn't really matter because the Pirates' offense is going to be so bad that they won't be able to come back in many games anyway. What this bullpen really needs is Vinny Chalk. What you gonna do when Chalkomania runs wild on you, brothers? The 2010 Pirates are a young team, which is exactly what they needed to do to become competitive. The problem is, that team managed to lose 40 of its last 60 games last year, which is not very conducive to winning baseball. Although I think the offense is going to be slightly better than it was at the end of last year, the defense, which was ranked number 1 in all of baseball, is going to be significantly worse. Although the pitching might be fairly solid most of the time, the offense will not produce enough runs for this team to be competitive on a night-to-night basis. The Greg Mercer guaranteed win-loss total for the 2010 Pirates? 64 wins and 98 losses. There are just way too many question marks on this team, and everything would have to go right for this team to even win maybe 72 games. You know, I'm so confident that the Pirates are going to lose well over 90 games that I've decided to do a little experiment this year. I've signed up on an internet sportsbook, and I'm going to be betting $20 of my own money against the Pirates in every single game of the 2010 season. I think by the end of the year, I will have made maybe $100 or $200 of free money, just for the Pirates to be an awful team. You'll be able to track my progress on a spreadsheet that I've made that I've linked over in the sidebar. So make sure you come back here periodically as I'll try to update it as much as I can. Well, that about does it from here. I know I paint a bleak picture, but I'm only being a realistic Pirates fan, and I don't see any way the Pirates avoid an 18th consecutive losing season. We'll just have to see how the season plays out. Later.